Chapter 5. Be curious, not judgmental. Walt Whitman. Darlings, meet-moi, because Frances Schultz, age 14, skinny and bumpy as a green bean, hair twisted into a wiry black propeller on top of her head, was in her glory. She sashayed into the small crowd of kids sitting in the shade under the chinaberry tree behind Hallelujah School, and flashed a smile so bright it prompted House to put on his sunglasses. "Welcome, everyone," she wobbled. "Bienvenue, tout le monde." House felt his hairs on the back of his neck stand at attention. There she was, his toad. "What's she saying?" asked Clebo. He and the rest of the Aurora County All-Stars sat at the back of the crowd and stared at Frances, and she had just stepped out of a UFO. "I think she's speaking Egyptian," said Boone Tolbert. Ned Tolbert, center fielder, shook his head in exasperation. "I told my mama I wasn't getting within 10 feet of Frances after what she did to House last year, and she still signed me up and Boone up for this thing." "Mine too," said Evan Evans. He squinted at Frances. What's wrong with her? House poked his sunglasses further up on his nose. "Same thing that's always been wrong with her." "Nah, it's worse," said Clebo. "She can't talk, and she looks like a Goonie bird." Frances's black hair was tinged with blue tips that matched her lipstick and fingernails. She wore black capris that stretched around her almost curves, and a silver shirt with colored sequins that caught the sun and shimmered against the caramel black color of her skin. "When can we leave?" Clebo asked. "Not now." House cradled his left elbow in his glove, right hand, and made himself stare at the patches of grass growing here and there. At least it was cooler under the chinaberry tree. "Not now." Clebo shoved his catcher's mitt into his armpit and gestured to his ball-playing friends. "Our mamas told us to show up, and we did. Now we can leave, right?" Boys murmured their agreement. "We got a game to get ready for," said Boone. "I'm speaking for all of us," said Clebo. "When can we leave?" House peered around the edge of the little crowd and saw Honey sitting cross-legged up front, mesmerized. "When it's over," he said. Ball-players groaned. "It's over." A shudder skittered across House's shoulders. Mr. Norwood Boyd's whole life was over. His body was right now lying on a metal table at Snowburger's funeral home. "Come to order, me miss." Frances tapped her clipboard with a pen. "I need your attention. Attention." She wore high-heeled rhinestone sandals on her narrow brown feet and a million tinkly bracelets on each arm. "You are the chosen ones," she intoned. "Me Biox." Then the chosen ones stared. Frances dropped her straw tote bag and flung her arms out for effect. "Biox. That's French for jewels." House pushed his sunglasses up further on his nose and wondered what the French word was for toad. Nervous laughter shifted through the crowd. "That's right," said Frances. She motioned. "Come on," with her hands. "Laugh, cry, carry on. C'est la vie. It's what we're here for." "Not me," piped Honey. She sat inches from Frances's painted toenails. She wore her pink tutu and had one arm wrapped around Eudora Weltley. Eudora wore a tutu, too, also pink, around her neck. She panted nervously. Honey craned, her neck up to Frances as she stated her purpose. "I'm here for the tryouts." Frances clasped her hands to her chest and made a face that her heart was aching with happiness. "Mais oui, of course you are." With the tips of her fingers, she slid her glasses onto her face. They'd be dangling around her neck on a jewelry chain. They were black, shaped like sideways teardrops. She gazed through the lenses, wide-eyed at the assemblage. She leaned toward them. They leaned back. "Everyone gets a part," Frances declared in a confidential tone. "Everybody. That's tout le monde in French. Tout le monde began talking all at once. "Of course we all get a part," said Ruby Lavender, sitting plop in the middle of the crowd. "We're signed up against our will." "Well, I'm not," said Melba Jane Latham. "Some of us want to help our hometown." Ruby unwrapped a piece of double bubble. "I'm happy to help out," she said. "I just don't want to be in some stupid county anniversary pageant. We should just stick with the operation in August like we always do." She shoved the bubble gum into her mouth. "We've got a 200th anniversary, and that's even better," said Melba Jane. She gazed at Frances, transfixed. "And this year, we've got professional help." Ruby hooted. Melba ignored her. Frances clapped her hands together in tiny motions. Her wispy tiny bracelets tinkled against one another like little bells calling each other to order. "Mia May," she said. "Silence, please. Silence. Time to get started. Remember, everyone gets a part." She spoke in crescendo tones. "This is our pageant, celebrating our town." Her face took on an angelic look as she crooned in a calm to come-to-glory voice. "It's positively Thornton Wilder." There was a smattering of applause. Kids looked around to see if there was anybody named Thornton Wilder among them, and Frances made a tiny curtsy. "She's the picture of poise," Melba whispered to Ruby. "Who is she?" whispered Melba's little sister Violet. Ruby popped her gum. "She used to be Frances Schultz." The bubble collapsed onto Ruby's nose. "She went off to boarding school last year, took too much French and drama, and turned into Maria Antoinette. Where's the Gulaton?" "I think she's amazing," sighed Melba. "You would," said Ruby. She rubbed pink off her nose. Frances pulled some papers out of her tote bag and clipped them to the clipboard. "I'll assign parts as they speak to me." "I don't want a part," cried Honey. "I want to be a dancer." She scampered to her feet, her legs, pale and thin as potato sticks, poked out from under her tutu. "House!" Frances shaded her eyes with a jeweled hand and peered into the crowd. "House! House Jackson!" She blew a lofty kiss in House's direction. Baseball caps bobbed as boys in the back of the crowd laughed and slapped at House with their gloves. House tugged his baseball cap lower onto his head. "Are we still friends, House?" Frances touched her tip of her tongue to the lip so that she searched for the crowd. House hunched his shoulders up to his ears and studied his shoes. Frances sighed and straightened her shoulders. "How about the rest of you, my former classmates? Are you still Mia May, even though I've been absent for a whole year?" "We ain't messy mess," cried Clebo, poking his head up about from the sea of caps. "But you're sure a mess." "Yeah," said Ned Tolbert. "Yeah," cried Lincoln Latham. Frances sniffed a shot. Dignified sniff. "House." Honey took a step away from Frances. She turned toward the small crowd. "House." Without a moment of hesitation, House popped up and made his way to Honey, his mind sputtering like a sprinkler. He'd had a matter of hours to get used to the fact that he'd seen a dead body, had to make a phone call to report the death, and had adopted a dead man's dog. And now he had to deal with Frances Schultz, his toad. The former theatric terror of Mabel Middle School, and the girl who had almost killed him last year. He reached for his sister. "You can dance, Honey." He pulled his sunglasses down, his nose a notch, and forced himself to look Frances in the eye. "Right?" Frances winked at House and struck a pointing statue pose. "Mais oui, but of course. We need les danseurs for the Danse Magion." Then she offered a confidential look to House, leaned toward him and whispered, "How's your elbow, darling?" "It's fine," he said in a voice as flat as paint, but that would not be enough to swallow his toad. Right now, it was stuck in his craw. He picked up Honey and held her in front of him for a moment, as if he might use her as a shield. Honey threw her arms around her brother's neck and pulled him close. House's sunglasses popped off his face and pancaked in the dirt. "Good," chirped Frances. She turned her attention to the crowd. "Tout le monde." It had been so long since we've seen one another. Allow me to reintroduce myself, Mie. She shone her radiant, white-toothed smile on the crowd. I have changed my name, tout le monde. I have nom n'importe. Please, s'il vous plaît, call me Finesse. Murmurs of uncertainty rolled from kid to kid. She has lost her mind, said Clebo. She evermore has, said Boone. Good garden of peas, said Ruby. She stood up, swiped dust from her overalls, and shoved her hair out of her face. My mama didn't sign me up. I'm dancing out of here. Me too, said Clebo. Your mama's gonna whoop you good if you leave, Clebo, said Wilkie Collins, first baseman. He peered at Clebo through his thick glasses. She signed you up just like mine did. Clebo kicked the dirt. A puff of dust drifted over his shoe. He motioned to his teammates sitting in the shade under the chinaberry tree. Who's with me? Let's get out of here. Finesse gushed passionate tears as she saw the boys rise. Miss Dancers, she said, holding her arms out as if she were offering them the world. Mais danseurs ballet. Not on your life, said Clebo. House? House squinted at Finesse in a high-moaned glare. The time had come. He tried to sound calm. I came to bring honey. The team came with me. We're leaving now. The news struck Finesse like a collapsed lung. She clapped her hand to her chest and staggered backward one step. You mean you're not staying? You're not going to help? We won't dance, said House. He made it up as he went along. He put honey down, retrieved his sunglasses, and shoved them onto the brim of his cap. In one smart gesture, he repeated himself. We don't dance. We play ball. Ball? Asked Finesse, ready for a volley. Le baseball? She made a tisk, tisk, tisk sound. Don't tell me you still put together that little ragamuffin Sandlot team every summer. She straightened her shoulders as if she were royalty. Honestly, House, at some point one must grow beyond running around after a shiny white ball. A bitter taste burped itself up from House's gullet, and he spit it into the dirt. If he'd had a silly white ball, he'd have thrown it at Finesse's silly propelled head with pleasure. Plop. One-toed down, just like a carnival game. Instead, he threw a few more words which amazed him, as he was unaccustomed to throwing around words in public. But the circumstances were dire. We got to go. Finesse sniffed and tried her best to look regal. Don't leave me, House. Honey clung to her brother's leg. She stared at Finesse with a tinge of terror in her eyes. I don't think she is who you think she is. You've got a part, Honey, said House. You're a dancer. Honey sniffed and wiped her eyes. House whistled, and Eudora Weltley staggered to her feet, her tutu wobbling around her neck and her tiny tongue hanging out of her mouth. She snorted, wagged her tail tepidly, and blinked into the bright sun beyond the chinaberry tree. Let's go, said House. Finesse rifled through the papers on her clipboard. I'll come too, called Ruby over the heads of the half-dozen others. She vaulted over Melva, Violet, and Melba's little brother, George. I'll just run and get my glove. No girls allowed, House said. He flexed his pinching hand. But I know baseball, sputtered Ruby. And I'm 11, almost as old as you. I'm good. Clebo can tell you. He's played catch with me 1,000,000 times. I don't know what you're talking about, said Clebo. He wore his most indignant look, which for Clebo meant he looked totally guilty. Honey's eyes filled with tears. Do I get tap shoes, House? Sure you do, said House. He took his sister's hand. Let's go. His voice held softness he reserved for Honey alone. I'll bet it's lunchtime by the time we get home. Aw, House, said Clebo. We ain't got all day. I'll catch up, said House. Start without me. Finesse tore a piece of paper from her clipboard and waved it in the air like it was on fire. None of you is going anywhere, she snapped in perfect high-pitched English. Nobody moves. Honey shrieked. So did Violet and George. Eudora Weltley plopped herself right back into the dirt, stuck her snout between her paws, and shivered. All of you, barked Finesse. Tout le monde, you'll stay right here. You're all on my list. Tout le monde sucked in its collective breath. Finesse straightened her shoulders with an exaggerated move and pruned up her face. I've got you on my list, Ruby Lavender. I've got you, House Jackson. She stabbed her fingers at the back row. And all your little ball players, too.